This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
What's up, y'all? This is One Royal Way here on Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Joel Penfield, Jordan Foote, and Josh Keiser joining me as always. Gentlemen, is the Heat kicking your ass like it's Georgia playing Mizzou, or is it just like, how are y'all feeling?
Unnecessary. Mizzou didn't need a ricochet shot there. That was so unnecessary.
So I made the joke that it was like Georgia playing the Citadel on SoCon Saturday, but because I know Josh is a Mizzou fan, they got the stray tonight. It had to happen.
It's as bad as an Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State beating. Oof.
You know, dude, like you can't. The thing is, like that insult can't hurt me. Like I'm so broken and beaten down by it. Like it can't hurt me.
It's as hot as Baker Mayfield versus Oklahoma State.
That one hurt. Okay, that one hurt.
What's the zero? Well,
the translation is wrong, but it's his favorite quote is that Kansas City in August is hotter than two rats fucking in a wool sock.
This is bad.
Which is just the most accurate thing. It is impressive. This is terrible, but we get a break in the Heat this weekend, thank God. And it's one of the probably a good thing the Royals are out of town this week.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember back in like Christmas, it was like the wind chill was like negative 35? Yeah. Here we are. The heat index is 135.
So fun.
That's a 100-degree swing, boys.
You know, there's some like scientific stuff behind that, I think. I'm not going to get political because I don't want to alienate anybody that listens to our podcast. But yeah, stuff happens in the atmosphere and the ozone layer, and it's the weather's wild. But I know you're going to ask me how I'm doing next. I'm doing good, doing well, and excited to pod. It's going to be a fun episode, I think.
Yeah, this is going to be a mailbag episode. We fielded questions from Twitter as well as the KCSN Discord, which if you subscribe to the Substack, it's $30 for the whole year. You get access to the Discord channel, which is predominantly Chiefs stuff, but there is all sorts of channels. It's an awesome community for KCSN subscribers, so be sure to check that out as well. And this show brought to you by Kansas City Strength and Conditioning. Be sure to check them out if you have a baseball or softball player in the area that needs a place to train. Day one supporter here of this show, and we can't thank them enough for that. So to get into our weekly thoughts, something that I wanted to talk about was a new reliever for the Royals that came up and made his debut since we last spoke. And that was John McMillan. The Whammer got called up from Double-A, and he's a ton of fun. Now, it's been 2 outings, so there's not a ton you can take from it, but it is like fun to watch a dude chuck hundos with an absolute, like, his slider and cutter is ridiculous. Josh, would you classify, not the slider, but the other pitch as a slutter?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably
okay,
accurate.
Cool, yeah. But, so I wanted to look, I was curious about where his Stuff Plus ranking would be and where it compares with other relievers and other pitchers that have come in with the Royals this year. And the Stuff Plus on John McMillan's fastball. Now, again, this is a super small sample. I am absolutely playing fast and loose with the numbers, but I don't care. In two innings, Stuff Plus is 136, which means it's 36% better than league average. And if you don't know, Stuff Plus looks at spin rate, spin efficiency, spin axis, vertical break, horizontal break, everything that makes a pitch, like really kind of deep diving into the numbers, makes 100 league average moving forward. So yeah, 136, which is the best fastball currently on the Royals side with Carlos Hernandez. Interestingly enough, Jose Cuas had the best Stuff Plus fastball on the Royals this year at 151. So I thought that was interesting. And then you look at the cutter is 114 and the slider is 101. So the Royals have a reliever with above average stuff with all three pitches. I looked at the rankings, again, playing fast and loose here. I took the minimum innings pitched down on the league-wide leaderboards to 1 inning and looked at all relievers. Jose Cuas, not Jose Cuas, I was just talking about him. John McMillan has the 13th or 16th best fastball in baseball, 136, among all relievers, among 14 fastballs.
What's Nicky Lopez's?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to go look that up. I don't know if they show position players. Well, they actually do, because I look at the Royals full leaderboard because I took it down to 1 inning so that I can get McMillan on there. And Nate Eaton Has a 104 on his slider, a 105 on his, or that was on his sinker, a 111 on his slider, and a 100 on his changeup. That's hilarious.
That's gonna be one of those things that gets lost in this piss poor season. Is Nate Eaton had a really good showing on the mound.
It's one of those things where I'm like, okay, would Nate Eaton rather be a quad A, like you're going to be up and down, non-roster invitee type for pretty much your entire career? Or do you just say, screw it, I throw 95 with sink and just go all in on the reliever thing? That's definitely a galaxy brain thought of the way Nate Eaton should take his career, but I mean, it was one of the most interesting things we saw in the Royals bullpen all year.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other guy I looked at was Cole Reagan's, and I specifically wanted to look at his slider, which Cole Reagan's slider grades out at a 130 stuff.
Ooh.
Which, for considering this is a brand new pitch for him that he's only thrown in 3 or 4 outings, but the fact that it grades out that well, I think it says a lot about A, his ability to throw it, and B, the Royals pitching development in the minors, like, hey, let's try this out, and it worked. I think it's a testament to some success there. So I took it down to about 20 innings among all starters because Cole Reagan's just on 28 innings in Kansas City, but the first outing, he didn't throw the slider. So I took it down to 20 just to kind of make it work. And it is the, it's the 13th best slider among all starters with at least 20 innings. Some notable names below, Hunter Green, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Justin Verlander, Yu Darvish, Reed Detmers, Sonny Gray, Grayson Rodriguez, Carlos Rodon, Corbin Burns. So it's in pretty good company there for a pitch that he just started throwing and seems to be pretty confident in at this point. It's really cool to see.
If you've got it there, what's his cutter grading out at now?
Let me look. It's a 93. So slightly below. Which, if he's comfortable throwing it, I'm not as worried about it now that he has the slider. I think a lot of the talk with him early on was ditch that thing because it sucks.
Yeah.
And just work on what you have with fastball, changeup, and curveball. And then once he added the slider, the cutter actually plays a little bit better because it can be that pitch up in the zone with that horizontal break. And then you have the slider that dives off of it. I'd be curious to see over, the next few outings if that cutter grade jumps up any, because he has that equalizer now with the slider.
Yeah,
I like it. I just wanted to. I was struggling this week, man, because we've highlighted a lot of players. I'm kind of bored with the whole over the last week this guy's doing blah 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 things. So, just kind of tying into that though, Jackson Kowar is a guy that hasn't been talked about much at all this season. Ever since he came up earlier in the year, didn't do so hot. Since the All-Star break in the minors, he started 19 innings, allowed 5 runs. That's a 2.37 ERA. He struck out 19 in those 19 innings. He's walked 7 and allowed 17 hits. Now, none of that individually means a lot. And then he had a couple outings within the past week. One, he threw 1 1/3 innings, struck out 3, allowed a hit and a walk. So a little bit of the best of both worlds with Jackson Kowar, kind of the good and bad with him. Then on the 19th against Chicago, he had a scoreless inning and only threw 10 pitches, and it was pretty quick work. So I didn't think anything of it until there was a clip tweeted out. I think it was the Bally Sports KC account that brought up a clip of him and Jeff Montgomery kind of going through some stuff on the mound. He said he moved to the center of the rubber, and he also is pitching exclusively out of the stretch now. He's kind of conceded, hey, I'm going to be in the bullpen. I'm going to be thrown in some leverage type situation. I might as well embrace it. And he's starting to slider 27% of the time this year after 10% last year. He's doubled his vertical drop in average there. So I don't know if any of this means anything. I still lean Jackson Kowar isn't going to be a long-term piece for the Royals, and he's just going to be this guy that was a relatively high draft pick and had the changeup, and he's still changeup dominant, but never amounts to a ton. But the results are improving a little bit. The raw numbers still kind of suck, but I am on my radar. He's a couple degrees removed from the center of it instead of being completely off, where I honestly had forgot he was even with the organization at all.
The other thing I think was interesting, and I think our guy Alex over Royals Farm tweeted it out, and it was something he had mentioned earlier in the season. Like, he needs to drop his arm angle from, like, because he's throwing basically straight over the top to, like, here, like that kind of 3/4. He's about here now. Like, it seemed like they made a little bit of a concerted effort to drop his slot just a little bit. It'll add a little more tilt to the slider. It's going to create a little bit more deception. And it seems to be working because he has been a lot better at the big league level as a reliever. Now, it hasn't been a huge sample, but considering how, for the most part, awful he had been for the entirety of his big league career to this point, I think just the fact that he's making any change like that tells me, maybe there's something there as a 6th inning mop-up guy or the occasional 7th, 8th inning. I think the stuff is so good enough that it can play there, especially when he can run the fastball up, 98, 99. Maybe there's something there. And it sucks because I was so high on him. I thought he was going to be the guy out of this class, and he has been basically the worst of the bunch. Just hope that maybe he's able to salvage something with his career at this point.
So out of Carlos, Clarkey, Coxey, Hearn, McMillan, Kowar, Tucker Davidson, you need an inning of scoreless ball. Who you giving the ball to right now?
I'd still say Carlos Hernandez just because, like, I know the last few weeks have not been great, but I think he had a really nice bounce back in Chicago, which I think helped him a lot because, and I tweeted about it earlier because he had a couple outings that were rough after the outing in Boston. Like, I do wonder how much that affected him mentally. Like, you're out of the inning, you made a good pitch, should be strike 3, and the umpire inserts himself into the game. Probably wasn't paying attention, calls it out of swing, 2 pitches later, you give up a home run. Like, that's got to weigh on you. And then the next two outings were really, really bad. And then you get that nice bounce back, so that's how quickly it can change for relievers. I go him, and then I go McMillan if I had to go 1-2.
I'd forfeit if I had to pick. Like, I guess I'd go Hernandez, but, like, I don't feel good about any of those at any point right now.
Well, it's just something I was thinking about this week because it was like, I think you can make a good argument for like 4 or 5 guys in that group, but it's in the end is not you don't feel comfortable with it at all with any of these guys. So I think Kowar can absolutely still be in that conversation as of what we've seen the last 2 or 3 outings, but still that's a 2 or 3 outing sample size against a very large sample of not being effective. So just something I was thinking about this week, but also I am kind of pumped up about this lineup that once everybody gets rolling, gets healthy, add Vinny Pasquantino back to this lineup, and I think you've got something really, really solid to work with. I was kind of playing around with batting orders and trying to keep a little bit of the right to left matchups kind of going. You can still stick with Michael Franco at third base, batting leadoff, then Bobby at second, Vinny batting third, Salvi fourth, MJ fifth, Nelly Velasquez, baby, give me him in right field on a regular basis just to see what he's got. But he's also giving you that right-handed power that this lineup is going to need in the very near future. And then Fermin, Massey, and Waters as your 7, 8, 9. I think that's a pretty solid lineup with solid defense as well. I think it's pretty well-rounded, top to bottom, very deep. And it kind of answered a lot of the questions that you came into the season wanting answers for. Being able to extend the lineup past your 1 through 6 guys to like a Massey and a Fermin and a Waters with all that pop and upside from all 3 of those guys, you can't really like pitch around anybody in that top half of the order. So I'm pretty pumped to see this lineup at full strength. If they add a couple guys in the offseason to see what they can do to kind of rotate some of these. We've seen Q loves matchup based lineups. So I could be really, really talked into top 10 offense next year if this lineup is what it is. So let's just see how it goes. But I was just kind of hit me this week how excited I was to see this next year for sure.
Okay, so how do you feel about it though if a Salvador Perez trade happens?
Yeah, I think that's pretty.
And you have Fermin, and I'm just looking at free agency. You probably can get for pretty cheap, like a Mitch Garver or something like that.
I mean, Garver's got pop.
Yeah, I mean, there's legit pop there, but unless they throw a catcher in a trade or something like that.
I mean, why not call Logan Porter up at that point? Give him a shot to be this backup catcher and maybe DH some days. I would love that. Maybe we got a question about something like that later on in this mailbag, but we'll have to see about that. But yeah, it's going to be pretty telling the direction of this club if they make a deal like trading Salvi in the offseason.
Yeah, I'm still kind of on the fence if I actually believe it's going to happen, but I think we have to operate under the assumption that it could. And so that's where I'm kind of doing the math on 24 and kind of looking at both sides of, is Salvi here, is he not?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty telling.
He has a 64 WRC plus since the beginning of June. He has like a 93 in August. So like I'm all for people being back on to Salvador Perez, like, oh, he's going to be back to what he was bandwagon, but like also he's 33 now and not staying a lot healthier, and the Royals aren't going to be any good next year. So like based on what we know, what we might infer and the age and contract, I don't know how much value he offers to Royals next year, but like there's also, and I don't know the data behind it, there's some value behind like, oh, Salvador Perez is in this lineup. Like you still have to account for him even when he's slumping, because he's not very blatantly a shell of himself yet. He's just had a couple rough months and seems to be snapping out of it a little bit. So if they do keep him, like Josh said, it's a pretty good lineup 1 through 6. And then you have guys that may not be total pushovers at the end. And that is the making of a playoff caliber lineup in theory. They obviously are not going to be a playoff caliber team overall, but I definitely get the logic there for sure.
Absolutely. We are going to answer your questions from the mailbag right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on all platforms. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We're going to go and answer your questions, and thank you guys so much for everybody that submitted questions either on Twitter or on the KCSN Discord. We really appreciate it because this made our episode, because we had no idea what the hell we were going to talk about. So we're going to talk about what you guys want to talk about. First one goes to our guy, Bayou Billy Butler, who I know is listening to this, so we absolutely had to get him first on here. How much money do you think the Royals will give Shohei Ohtani when he signs in Kansas City this offseason? Great thought. I love the pipe dream. I think it's hysterical. Don't worry when he signs in Seattle. Don't worry. I will come on this podcast very happy when they give him 10 years and $600 million. I think it'll be just fine.
Yeah, I was wondering. I don't think it's going to be Kansas City, but what do you guys think that Shohei commands? I'm very curious about this.
I think it's going to be 600.
Yeah,
straight up.
It's going to be a lot. It's going to be 500 M's. Like he is going to get an insane amount of money. How old is he? 29, 28. So you're going to get, and it's tough because like I could see him being this level player for like 4 or 5 more years and then dropping off a little bit just with the athleticism. He's still going to be a damn good hitter and a solid pitcher. And like if you do both those at a high level, you're going to get crazy value even into your mid to late 30s. So it's going to be worth it. Like it's going to be a good deal. And I don't really worry about his durability long term, but it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a shit ton of money that like would put the Royals firmly out of it, especially if I want to talk with Bobby Witt Jr. extension. They couldn't even dream of affording a guy like Shohei Ohtani.
No, and he's gonna do it for 5 more years. I think he's gonna do both for 5 more years than he's gonna hit. But if he wins another MVP or 2 and a World Series in that 5 years, the contract is paid for itself at that point. And then you take whatever happens on the back end when he's just 37 and just swinging for the fences still because he can.
You guys both said 6 or 5?
6.
I think I'm closer to 5.
What is the length on that?
10. I think it's 10 for 600.
I got 10 for 400.
There's no way he's getting $400 million. I'm just telling you.
I mean,
this is
29. The Trout and Harper extensions. I mean, those guys are at the top of their games when they sign their extensions.
He
didn't get contracts.
Well, and I think some of this too is like racking our brains because this is unprecedented. We've literally never seen a contract, a free agent like this. But when you think about it, like you're like the ace of a pitching staff, like a top end starting pitcher. Right now, the going rate is around 300 mil, like Garrett Cole. Okay, so
like a 45 million annual.
300 million there. And a really solid middle of the order bat that you know is going to be the middle of your lineup every day for 10 years. That's about $300 million. And he's both.
We have an ESPN insider predicted, and I just scrolled past the article, 11 years, 605 million. We have a CBS Sports Insider, 500 over 10. And then we have a Kansas City Royals catcher, Salvador Perez, saying 600 for 10. So Joel and Salvi are in the same boat here.
Yeah.
Again, no U.S. sports franchise is fully guaranteed a player even 500 million per this article by the Washington Post. So I think it's closer to 5. I could see him getting 6 just because that's insane. 4 would be more in line with like what I would shell out for him just because, but he's going to get a shit ton of money either way.
Yeah.
By the Mariners. Joel's calling it.
I'm calling it. So then Michael Farina, who hosts the Royals Deluxe podcast, he said, what do you think a Bobby Witt Jr. extension would look like if he signs one this offseason? Do the Royals take a safe-ish route and just buy out a couple of years of free agency, or do they drop a Tatis-like mega deal right now? I'm going to answer this question since you both want to trade him and get rid of the best player this franchise has had since Carlos Beltran. Look, what I think the Royals would do and what I would do are two entirely different things, and they're both kind of fall into this question. Like, I think the Royals would try and get like an 8-year deal for about, $250, $275 that buys out about 4 years of free agency. After this year, he'd be, I think, 31 at that point. And then he can go and probably still get a pretty decent deal on the back end if he so desires. I would go full fucking send and drop like a 14-year, 15-year, $300 some odd million contract and make him the face of your franchise for the next 15 years. I said it last year, even when he struggled. I'm still saying it this year. Like, you cannot let a dude like this walk out the door. You just can't. Like, I understand the hesitancy to give out some of these deals because obviously some of them have gone very poorly. Like, obviously the Tatis stuff with the suspension and then what happened in Tampa with Wander. Like, it's obviously an inexact science, but I think when you have a guy like this that is a generational talent that has asserted himself as a top 10 player in the sport this year, I think you have to do it. I don't think you can trade this guy because I think we're getting close to a point where there is no way to get fair and equal value for him in a trade. Like, I just don't think you do. There's no possible way to do it.
Matt Lamar wrote a great piece on Royals Review talking about this exact subject. I had taken a couple shots last week about kind of estimating that. Again, Alex Duvall and I, we both kind of went after each other's proposals on what we thought was going to happen. I think we pretty much agree on the same thing, that it's you're either going to get like maybe a year and maybe a second year of free agency, but highly doubt that second year. You might be able to extend another year, but I don't think we're going to get multiple free agent years from a Bobby Witt Jr. extension unless it is that lucrative 14-year deal that has multiple opt-out possibilities for him. Kind of like the Julio Rodriguez deal, and Lamar's piece on Royals Review kind of went down to 2.
That might be a way to structure it. And I think we hit those benchmarks too.
You can either go with the Tatis extension, 14 over $341 million, just cut and dry. That's what it is. Or the Julio route, which is 12 for $209.3 up to $470 million. It's pretty incentive-laden and pretty creative on the opt-outs and the options and stuff. They kind of get thrown into that. So 2 pretty interesting routes there. I think the more enticing one would probably be the Julio Rodriguez route. I think that is the way more likely deal that Bobby Witt Jr. would sign, just because, and you make those incentives pretty easily hit. But if he does hit them, like, you got an MVP candidate type of guy. So I would probably go with that Julio Rodriguez extension and just say, get going.
Yeah, ditto to both of you guys. I think Joel's point about it would behoove them to do something big time as soon as possible, and Josh's point about the Julio extension, and also, again, hats off to Lamar for writing a really good article. I don't think they do anything this winter. I just don't think they're going to get it done, get any sort of extension worked out. Just my gut feeling. The ideal outcome for them would obviously be to have him as a Royal long-term, and I still think that's going to happen, but I just don't know if they're going to expedite that process. This isn't really an organization that typically does stuff like that, and I know they believe in him long term. They might come up with something. Oh, we want to see it over one more full year, whatever it's going to be.
Price up, man.
Exactly, and it's going to go up. So he's going to be worth 13, 14 million, or sorry, 13, 14 years for like 350 mil. It's going to be a shit ton of money. The Royals can afford that if they want to long term, but it's going to be more of a future thing. I have a feeling.
Yeah, we'll see. Jacob Milham, KC. The Royals start 2024 without a single player on the 2023 roster. They have to make a team with the current farm system. Who starts opening day 2024, and who leads the team in home runs? I forgot to make anything to do with this. So, what do you guys think?
I think Anthony Veneziano is on the bump for opening day. And I think Vic Lofton or CJ Alexander, if he technically still counts, would lead the team in home runs. Alexander's pop is legit. I don't know about anything else in his game right now or ever. And then Lofton, he's just interesting. Like we'll talk about him in a few questions, I think, at some point. But he does have some pop to him. And I think he also has the positional versatility where he would play a significant amount of games. So he'd get the plate appearances to get that. I think really that's just a tough question because the farm system versus a guy like Nelson Velasquez, but he's technically on the team, but he also technically hasn't been on the team for long and does have the power. But I'm going Veneziano. And then if I had to pick one of the two I just brought up, I think I'd go Nick Lofton.
I went full-blown lineup here. I agree. Veneziano going to be on the bump. Catching, Logan Porter. First base, Devin Mann. Second base, Javier Vaz. Third base, Nate Eaton. Shortstop, Nick Lofton. Despite not having logged many shortstop innings, I believe in him that much that he can go whatever. He can go be the shortstop. Left field, John Rave. Center field, Bubba Thompson. I think we're going to forget about him quite a bit, but give me some Bubba Thompson in the center field. Right field, Brewer Hicklin. Love Brewer Hicklin. I can never quit Brewer Hicklin. And the designated hitter is Tyler Gentry, just because the defense out there in the outfield is really, really good. I got Nick Lofton would be winning that home run. It wouldn't be a lot, but he is right now tied for the home run lead in Omaha with 13, I believe, and 323 plate appearances. Got just a 170 ISO, but a 13.3% K rate. So he's got 13 home runs and just a 13.3% K rate. I think that's the difference between like a CJ Alexander, a Devin Mann, a Brewer Hicklin potentially leading this 30-win team to the home run title on this team. It would be just the fact that he would be able to square them up a little bit more often. So I would give me Vic Lofton on that one.
General Lee Awesome asks, is there a food you would go to the ballpark to eat even if there wasn't a game? Any food from any stadium is acceptable. I will say, like, there are days where nothing hits better than a ballpark brat.
Yeah.
So, like, I get it. Like, I couldn't do it, like, super randomly, but, like, if it's, like, the middle of summer and I had the opportunity to just go to the K and get a brat and just sit there, totally do it.
I went probably something we could probably create somewhere else, but a brisket acho, I think, has to be done here. Just
that has potential.
Delicious.
Yep.
But I think my number one spot has got to be a beer bat. Shout out Tucker Franklin. There's
yeah.
I mean, I did a podcast prior to this where we drafted like the best beers, and a ballpark beer is it just hits differently. It just does. It doesn't matter if there's a baseball game. If I'm sitting in a seat on a hot day with a beer in hand, life is good. So I give me a beer bat, and I'm a happy Josh.
I would go to Yankee Stadium. Hear me out. I know that we've talked about the Yankees. I know where you guys stand on them, and I, contrary to a lot of people, don't have any problem with the Yankees. I would get a spicy chicken sandwich. I'd get buffalo chicken mac and cheese, so I'd double down on the chicken, and then I would get a Grand Slam shake, and then to wash all of that down, I would get a beer bat filled with Tank 7 imported from Boulevard, and I would just pass out in the stands, and no one would hear from me again. It's like, dude, and Tank 7's bad because, like, me and Joel have been to Yard House. You can't get a half yard of Tank 7. It's not possible because it's so potent. They're like, dude, you would literally die. Like, it's not okay. So I'd do it.
Man, I got a horror story from a couple Super Bowls ago about Tank 7. That's not a podcast story.
Jordan's menu, I hope you get good financing on that because that's about a $300 food order.
It's covered by KCSN, I think. They left BJ Campbell's last enough to cover that.
Kenny Mac, 1984. Thoughts on Carson Rockeforth? Pick has been widely panned, but he's been very good so far. I actually really like Carson Rockeforth the more that I watch him. Just for some stats here for people that may not know. He's only played 11 games in high A, but he's got a 163 WRC plus, slashing 325, 451, 475. He's Kang right just under 20%, but he's walking at 18%. And he's playing a legit center field. He's got 6 stolen bases in 11 games. The swing kind of reminds me of Alex Gordon a little bit. It's got that really exaggerated one-hand finish that's really built for line drives. If he can build up to be like a 12 to 15 home run guy, which I think there's enough bat speed and barrel there that it probably can happen with maybe another offseason, have the Nicky Lopez or Merrifield 9 eggs diet. And I think that's an everyday center fielder in the big leagues by 2025 because he can play the position that well. He's not going to be a 163 later on his creative plus guy, but if he's like 115, which I think is fully possible, this could be a guy that they kind of got a steal out of in the 3rd, 4th round of the draft.
He's got 6 stolen bases in those 11 games. His defense projects pretty well. I think the on-base ability is transitioning, and I think did he play in the Cape Cod League? Did I read something about that when he got drafted?
Let me check Baseball Reference. Hold on.
There was something about he went somewhere and started tweaking his profile and lost some of the power, but gained some on-base ability. Okay, that's what I thought. So it was the Cape League. And obviously different there than it is playing college ball. I just think he has one of the higher floors out of any prospect in the Royals farm system, and that's why I said last week, that's a high ranking to have him at 16 or 15 or whatever it was, but it's also hard to disagree with just because I can't see him dropping much lower than that at any point. He has done everything so far, and again, it's 11 games. We're going to talk about this with a few guys, I guess, over the course of this mailbag. He has been good, and I think the profile was good when he got picked. He's done nothing to change that, so a very positive start for him.
Definitely a positive start. I will throw out that he's still pretty old for his low A Columbia status right now.
He's 21.
So I would kind of take that with a grain of salt, kind of like the rookie ball guys that are absolutely crushing right now. It's always with a grain of salt with those guys. So I want to see Rockford kind of come up and do the same thing there in the Quad Cities. But like you guys are talking about, it's a hell of a great start. I was trying to looking for some body comps and profile comps to see, exactly kind of what we could dream about, and I kind of came across an interesting one Jake McCarthy out in Arizona, left-handed guy that's on contact speed oriented with decent defense and enough pop to be register, but yeah, still 6'1", something like that. 215 I think is what McCarthy's running at, so I feel like that's pretty similar body comp and what he could profile as. So if that's what we can kind of look forward to, awesome. I kind of also wanted to talk about potentially him and Isbell kind of matching up, but Isbell's a little bit smaller of a guy, but I feel like the profile is still pretty similar. So that's what I was kind of, came up with as far as what I kind of squint and see. But yeah, great start for him. I'm kind of going to definitely keep an eye on him. We also probably need to shout out the fact that they took him in the comp round kind of allowed them to go get and sign Hyro Wyatt, which we saw some videos of him this last week, and some of that stuff is electric. So if we're going to knock that pick, then we need to also understand why it was made and what it meant on behind after that. So that's just something I would throw out as well.
We got some more questions we're going to answer right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Thank you to everybody that's sending questions. We're going to keep that rolling now. Josh's brother, Brian Keiser. led with the quote from John Sherman. Said, Jesus. I think we did not come to grips with where we are. We were fooling ourselves, and now we kind of know where we are. Without difference makers on the horizon in the minors, how do we add enough WAR to get where we want to be? Are T's and P's enough?
You're relying on a lot of internal development. And once you get to like where they are going to be at the end of next year is where they were supposed to be at the end of this year. I think maybe not record wise, but in terms of like an organizational evaluation, they got a lot done this year, but they have more work to do in terms of figuring out who belongs on the team. Where do they need to make external additions, stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, they can and should add this offseason. We're going to talk about that here in a few questions, but you're going to really rely on a lot of players to get better that are already on the team and already are in the farm system. Like, I don't think you're going to go, they could go spend and probably put together a team that competes next year if they really wanted to, but it would sacrifice the long-term of the organization. That's not going to happen. Just going to let people know the Royals are not going to go be big spenders this offseason, in my opinion. So you're really not even getting into the numbers of WAR and all that stuff. You're just going to have to hope that your guys you have now get better.
I got into the numbers of the WAR and got real nerdy with it. So just a quick rundown. I kind of took the average WAR of all the playoff-bound teams that made it last year and all the paces of the leading postseason candidates right now. You want to be around like 45 WAR as a team, F-WAR. Royals are currently on pace for 17.6, so you could say they have a ways to go. I will also kind of paste out where they've been since the All-Star break, 27.9. So let's get a little, fast.
Sunshine puppy.
Sunshine puppy. Yeah. So let's just pretend that they could be on a 27.9 pace. They go out and they spend a lot of money, about $45 million annually on Aaron Nola to anchor that rotation, Seth Lugo to help out with the starting rotation and potentially move to the bullpen if anybody kind of pans out a little bit more. Give me Jordan Hicks, give me Adam Duvall, come on down. You've added about 7 WAR, I think, kind of estimate there, puts us at 35. I think once you get Vinny back, you net about 3.9 to 4 wins just because of the difference between DH and first base right now to what Vinny could probably provide. And you're still left with needing about 5 to 7 WAR that needs to come from internal candidacy. So it is very much about internal candidacy, even if they do go out and drop $45 million annually in this contract run.
I love those free agent moves. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a later question. From Ben Taylor at BC Taylor 10. Who do we need to watch for making their debut down the stretch? Now, I know that people are clamoring for Nick Lofton, Tyler Gentry. I know Devin Mann is probably due, but there's such a log jam in the infield and the outfield right now with all the at-bats that need to go around. I don't see that happening, at least not unless there's, unforeseen injuries. But I think Anthony Veneziano, maybe a John Bolin, I think those are 2 guys that probably are going to get a shot. I don't know if I don't think there would be anybody in Double A. Maybe if like the Royals just say F it. I had Chandler Champlain, who has been awesome in Double A.
Yep.
So I think you're looking more on the pitching side than you are position players. I don't know.
That's all I have.
Thoughts, but
yeah, 100% agree on that. I would also potentially maybe throw in Will Klein in there, but yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. He was someone else I brought up. I thought of, yeah.
And I think it's going to largely depend on the Rule 5 status because a lot of those guys, like Veneziano, was eligible last year. So I think we need to figure out what we have in him. I think he gets added regardless, but I really think it's time to kind of figure out what he's got. Could potentially squint and see Andrew Hoffman in that picture as well, but
I give it to
but again, I think
Hoffman.
Yeah, probably so. So I think we've kind of covered that.
So this kind of goes into the next question with John Farrell, JJ Farrell 451. Does Nick Lofton really fit their plans, or is he just organizational fodder? Now the injury kind of hampered things, so it's kind of hard to tell. But he's been good enough at pretty much every level that I'm like, okay, if he's not up now, do they not want to expose him? And they think that there's maybe something there that could be problematic, and they just want to keep him in AAA and insert him in a trade this offseason with a Carlos Hernandez, a Salvador Perez, a Brady Singer, whoever they could end up potentially moving, and just make that, a sweetener in the deal. I kind of lean more that way right now, considering there's been like no smoke around him even possibly getting a promotion.
And pretty much deserving it. I mean, he's hitting the ball really well.
Yeah.
Injury part. But I mean, obviously, I still very much love Thick Lofton. Best route to the majors might be through the outfield, which is absolutely jammed right now. And that was prior to them adding Nelly Velasquez, who's been hitting the ball very hard lately. So I agree. I think he'll more than likely be a trade piece to sweeten up another deal, to eat a lot of money. I have the Salvi deal is the kind of the deal that he would get eaten up with. So it would be a very sad day if that were to happen. But that's my kind of how I see the plan working out with him.
I think they want to call him up, but they just don't really have a great spot for him. Like it was Mondesi in his way, it was Whit Merrifield in his way, it was Nicky Lopez in his way, it was Samad Taylor in his way. There's a bunch of outfielders in there. He got hurt, a little bit inconsistent. He has a 64 WRC plus in August, so he's kind of scuffling a little bit. Like I think Nick Lofton long-term is going to be a part of the team. I'm not ready to say he's going to get traded, but I just am not too terribly high on him. And I think that maybe the Royals shared some of that, and that he's not a long-term third base option, not a long-term shortstop option, kind of this guy that maybe can play some outfield. They also have more investment in terms of time and maybe financials too, and trade value in guys they want to figure out first. So he has just been the odd man out for a long ass time. Next year, I think that changes. Maybe he makes his debut this year, but again, like Joel said, there's not really a spot for him right now. So kind of long-term plan. Like if you would have asked me this at the beginning of the season, my answer would have been more firmly, yes, he's a part of the plan. Now, not really his fault, just because of the other moves they've made. He's low on the pecking order still. Instead of it being, hey, they got rid of a bunch of guys to clear way for Nick Lofton, now it's like, hey, they got rid of some guys and replaced. So now he's kind of still stuck where he was.
Another one from Ben Taylor. The Royals have looked much better since the All-Star break. Is this sign of an upward trajectory that could lead to 75 to 80 wins next year, or just leveling out from an atrocious first half? It's absolutely the second part. That first half was so puke-worthy awful that they were bound to hit a streak there like they did that 7-game win streak. You're not going to get baseball is hard enough and the Royals are not good, but every team wins 5 or 6 in a row. It just happens. I think it's probably going to look more like a 65-win team next year, but that's going to be about a 15-win improvement from where we're at right now. So, yeah, it's not going to be that significant unless something crazy happens and everyone just hits that stride in April and they get off on a pretty good streak.
Yeah,
that's what it would have to take, but I don't think it's going to be that. I think it'll be closer to 65, 68 wins, and we're hoping for 75, 80 in 25.
You mentioned 65, which is interesting. Last year, they played the second half at a 67 win pace, and right now they're playing the second half at a 63 win pace. So you split the difference there, you would get exactly 65 wins. I would be surprised if they won 70 next year, let alone 75 to 80. Of course, we haven't seen the offseason yet. They could make some uncharacteristically good moves where I'd be like, okay, well, I could squint and see 75 wins and a decently competitive bad team. I expect them to be a bad team that has more clarity a year from now, as opposed to a bad team that for most of the year, everyone's running around with their hair on fire. No one knows what they're doing. John Sherman finally said the part out loud that I have been waiting for people to acknowledge, and they now know where they're at. They know that they kind of blew their window a couple times in terms of the rebuild, a 3-year rebuild. It's now a long-term thing, but if this is year one of that 2 or 3 year pace, next year you make a step forward, then you, like Ben said, 75 to 80. Instead of that being next year, you're probably pushing it back to 2025.
It's going to take probably three different things that could happen that I would start to believe that 75 to 80 wins is possible next year. They got to do something huge this offseason. They got to win 70 plus in 2024 potentially before I'll start believing in the following one. Or if the calendar turns to March, then I'll start believing that they go 75 to 80. So this time, when they flip the calendar to March, I'm still going to be drinking the Kool-Aid saying 75.
Of course you will. It's a time-honored tradition of having John on a podcast.
death, taxes, and Josh gets way too optimistic the preseason.
Which is a more time-honored tradition, that or the annual "This is the Chargers year" from the NFL media.
I mean, they're both very reliable. It's tough. I would say the most Kool-Aid is consumed on the Chargers, but both of them are gross. They're very.
We're like,
very gross.
that's been happening for like 3 presidential administrations at this point. So
Yeah.
another one from our guy Bayou Billy Butler. Who on the roster won a battle royal style fight to the death?
I think this is easy.
Carlos Hernandez or Max Castillo, one of those. Or if it's held in the rain, Brady Sear would whoop everybody's ass.
Oh yeah, that's the answer.
No. It's Salvador Perez. Guys.
No,
This guy
no
is
way.
6'3", 255. He has taken a beating. He's the toughest dude on this roster.
He couldn't
He's
hurt
the
a
leader.
fly.
He's ripping spines out of backs. It's Salvi season. He's walking out of that.
Carlos Hernandez is the same size as him and is a dog, and Max Castillo is 280 pounds of just
Are we sure
beefy guy, I guess. I think Carlos Hernandez is a dog. I think he's more of a dog than Salvador Perez. Salvador Perez, I'm not calling him soft or anything, but like if this fight happened, exactly, he'd be way too happy.
Yeah.
Sneaky. We talked about it last week with like Michael Garcia. That look that he gives pitchers, like that dude would definitely fight dirty. And like I think he's got a mean streak in him.
That's a pretty serious accusation, man.
I mean,
holy shit.
I bet he's got
He's going to run up and kick somebody in the nuts or something right off the bat.
Straight up shin kicks. Straight up shin kicks.
Moving on here, Nick Johnston from the KCSN Discord. Do you think we should be more active in free agency this year or lay low like the past offseason? So Josh brought up free agent moves. And pretty much everybody that he brought up are guys that I have on my radar of like, yes, please go sign that guy. Because to me, like I understand we're still in a rebuild, but to me, it would be wholly unserious of this organization to go, yep, nope, we're fine with running it back with what we have right now. A team that's going to win 50 games. Sure, they'll obviously all get better. We don't need to inject anybody else in there. Everything's going to be fine. I would be furious if they decide that the biggest free agent move they're going to make is whatever this next offseason's equivalent of is giving Jordan Lyles a 2-year, $17 million deal. If that's their idea of being active in free agency, it's a damn joke.
Yeah, and that would be kind of where I start to get a little worried because we spent a whole year trying to figure out where we are. Right. But for me, the optimistic guy that wants everything to be great, it would be worrisome because we spent a whole season trying to figure out where we are. Here we are in August, and we say that they know where we are now. So that means things gotta start moving here. This is the action that needs to start. So if they need to, it's not a great free agent class, but there are guys out there. But I kind of have some faith in this, this coaching and development crew to rub some spit on some pieces of coal and get some diamonds out of it potentially. So I've got plenty of hopes and dreams in them. I'd like to see some free agents signed. I'd like to see some trades happen, and let's get this ball going.
I think at the most you're looking at a second baseman, maybe, and 2 outfielders if you really wanted to go spend money, 2 impact starters, and 3 competitive relievers. I guess you should say realistically you're looking at probably 1 outfielder, 1, maybe 2 starting level guys, and then a bullpen piece or 2. You're not going to get a ton. And I only listed second base because I was like, what position could you feasibly make any argument whatsoever where they'd be like, okay, they could go out and get a guy to light a fire under this guy's ass, or in case this guy isn't who people think he is. And I'm like, first base, you can't. Catcher, maybe, but they already have enough cooks in the kitchen. Third base, shortstop, you can't. Then the outfield is what it is. We talked about Massey last week. Also, though, you aren't going to really need to go out and get an impact level second baseman. Like that's going to be in your ideal lineup, the 7 hitter probably, or the 8 hitter, maybe even the 6 guy. Like either way, you're probably looking at activity, yes, but more on the pitching side, far superior than the hitting side.
Another one from Ben Taylor, kind of going back to my Jordan Lyles pot shot. We're going to move on from Jordan Lyles this offseason, right? Right?
I don't think they are. No. He's making the same he is next year.
Yeah. I mean, every time you have the opportunity to send a guy out every fifth day to go get absolutely shelled with a 6.2 ERA, I mean, you just got to do it.
Well, I'm not, before I say this, I'm not trying to be the Jordan Lyles eats innings guy, but, which means I kind of am by default, even though I don't want to be. The Royals have two guys that have pitched 139.1 innings this year. Jordan Lyles is one of them. Zach Greinke is third at 110. They just don't have the length in the rotation, and they have guys. We came into the year and said, the Royals have 8 or 9 viable options in the rotation, blah, blah, blah. Some of them have blown out their arms. One of them has a shoulder issue. 2 or 3 of them haven't seen the bigs this year. One of them, Zerpa, is up and down and was injured. Like, you need someone to occupy innings, and I'm not campaigning for that to happen, but there's 8.5 million reasons why the Royals are going to keep Jordan Lyles. There's also 139.1 other reasons why I don't agree with it. I think it's a bad contract and a bad player, but I do think they're going to keep him for 2024, at least to start the year. Maybe if he sucks for a few months, you DFA him or try to flip him if he has a little bit of success, but I do think he is on the opening day roster.
I agree. He's definitely going to be on this roster for $8.5 million next year. I think he's still going to eat some innings. I think there's going to be a little bit more solidity in that rotation with Singer, with hopefully Lynch, with Reagans. And if Lyles is your number 5 starter, you could do a lot worse as your number 5 starter. And if he's given the Greinke treatment like Greinke has been given, anytime he gets even close to that third time through the order, he gets pulled. Lyles gets thrown out there for the third time through, for the fourth time through, and then gets shelled. He usually gets that 5th or 6th earned run sometime in that third time through the lineup. So if he were to get pulled before he gets to that point, then maybe we see a bounce back relative to Jordan Lyles' talent, which is usually 4.5 ERA with a 4.49 xFIP. I think that could be very realistic to see from Jordan Lyles in a walk year, that if he's your number 5 guy, he's not hurting you nearly as much as he is this year.
Our guy, Christian Gumminger, what's the big baseball move to reverse the public perception to gain their support for a downtown stadium? Do not take into account that it can be privately funded. I think it's Bobby Witt Jr. extension is the first.
Bingo.
I think that is the biggest thing. Because even though people are going to talk out of both sides of their mouth on the free agency thing, that it's going to be spend money and then the Royals sign guy, this guy sucks. What are we doing here? It's the Bobby Witt Jr. extension, I think, is the biggest thing that I think would get people to do it. And not like we're going to do an 8-year for 120. No, it's if they do the 15 for 400, like I mentioned, that I think it's going to actually help sway a lot of public perception on the stadium.
There's literally nothing else. You're not going to go Shohei. That's not going to happen.
No.
So that's literally the next thing you could do to not only shake we're not going to pay our players, but also shake we're not going to let those guys go. If we're homegrown, we like these guys, we're going to invest in them. You can trust us to do that moving forward. Give us a new stadium, please.
Yeah. Next one from Chandler. Which of the young guys is most likely to get traded because of depth this offseason? He mentioned specifically Prado, MJ, Lofton. We talked about Lofton. Is there anybody else? I think MJ has played himself into getting another opportunity next year. At least since the All-Star break, he's been about a 140 WRC plus. So is he going to be closer to second half MJ as opposed to first half? I guess we'll see, but he's at least got the positive momentum going into next year. Prado, I frankly have no idea. I'd rather have Vinny because I think he's a much safer option. Prado's just striking out too much. He's not walking in the same way. The power has not come back. He hasn't necessarily evolved as a hitter in certain times, and a lot of his calling card was elite defense, and he was one of the worst first basemen in baseball this year. So what does that tell you about the value? I don't know. I don't know if there's enough of a trade that you could trade him for anything, unless you just kind of he's like a throw-in in the deal. I don't think there's much else.
That's why it's MJ Melendez for me. If he keeps up what he's done over the past month or so, he's easily the most likely to be moved, in my opinion, because he doesn't fit defensively. Offensively, he fits, but does he really? But like if he can improve just enough to dupe some team into dupe is strong because he might turn out to actually be that caliber of hitter. But in the event he doesn't, though, if he's like, oh, okay, MJ Melendez is good, let's trade for him. Nick Prado did the reverse of that. He started off really well and then hit a wall and hasn't done anything since. And like, you could always move him to the corner outfield if you absolutely have to. He can't be worse out there than MJ Melendez has been defensively. So I think it's Melendez. I'm not saying that he's going to get traded, but if I had to rank all of the young players the Royals have, like that are core guys, quote unquote, even Nick Lofton extending to that, I still think it's MJ Melendez.
I don't appreciate the slander in my boy Nick Prado. He hasn't played a game in a month. You guys talking like he hasn't done shit for the last.
No, and that's why they should keep him.
Hasn't been playing. Yeah. Get out of here. But I do think that, having said that, I think Prado might be the guy that gets moved. I would be calling maybe like Baltimore. They seem to really like former Royals first baseman to see if they could help out with a little bit of the pitching problems. But we'll see about that. But I think of deal like including him with the Salvi deal to Miami, who also needs a first baseman of the future. I think that could make a lot of sense and could be pretty beneficial too. So MJ makes a lot of sense as well. So I'd probably be switching my answer to that, but just don't like the slander on my guy, Nick Prado.
Scott Newcomb 4, what do the Royals do with Tyler Gentry? And this kind of falls into the Lofton thing where there's just not enough at-bats to go around right now. But I think he's going to be a non-roster invitee to spring training. He's going to get every opportunity, I think, to win a job in the outfield. Right now, I think the outfield is going to be, just on opening day, my thought is MJ, Drew Waters, and Nelly Nukes. I think that's your outfield, but I think Tyler Gentry is going to get every opportunity.
Agreed. Same.
I think he takes Kyle Isbell's job at some point next year and replaces him as like a guy that gets into the lineup or does play some defense. And like he's a different player, obviously, but this year, walking 13% of the time, 23% strikeout rate since July 1st. He has a 900 OPS, a 127 WRC plus. He's walking 18% of the time. Like he's doing pretty much all he can do right now at the minor league level. He's going to be 25 in February. It's time. I'm not a huge Tyler Gentry guy, but like there's not a ton to dislike about his profile. And if he turns out to be a decent fourth outfielder, the Royals would use somebody like that because they have a lot of unknowns right now. So I think they should keep him. They will keep him, and he'll work his way in somewhere next season.
Last one here from Kyle Collier _810. Do you think that if you were on the mound, you could get Salvador Perez to swing at one of your off-speed pitches?
Hell yeah.
I did throw a really good changeup back in the day. I could probably just throw the rosin bag and he would think it's the ball in the other batter's box and swing at that. I could get at least one swing and miss.
And he didn't say swing and miss. He said swing and just swing. So I could get him to, tag me for a home run. Also, though, against major league caliber pitching, 38% whiff rate on breaking pitches and 30% whiff rate on off-speed offerings this year. You factor in the 15 standard deviations for me compared to a major league pitcher.
Yeah.
There's probably like a 1% chance, if maybe a 0.5% chance. Like I'm going to answer yes with a Matty Lane answer of he can swing at it, you just take it out of the yard. But whiffing, probably less than a 1% chance. Even though Salvador Perez 100%. Is known for whiffing, he wouldn't do that if I threw it.
Yeah, I'm Matty answering this wholeheartedly, 100% likelihood that if I get it to the plate, he's swinging at it, and 198% chance that he parks it.
There's a very, very good chance that happens. And hey, I throw Salvador Perez a changeup right down the middle, he hits into the fountains. That's a cool story. That's fine by me. Thank you guys so much for your questions on this episode. Really helped us out a ton. Be sure to help us out as well. Like this video if you're watching on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to turn those notifications on. We only have about 6 episodes left in the season, which is kind of wild to think about, but we really appreciate you guys tuning in every single week, supporting us and supporting KCSN. We'll talk to y'all next week.